Jen, I am so excited to be just talking with you, really looking at some of the changes that you've made. You just celebrated a year in business. Congratulations on that milestone. And wanted to be able to just dig in a little bit further about what it is that you do, how you serve people, and some of the things that allowed you to really grow a business so quickly and be able to free up more of your time. So right off the bat, would love to hear a little bit about what you do and about Loomis Accounting.
You bet. So my firm, Lumos Accounting, was formed about a year ago. I specifically help small business owners who are either working already with an accounting professional, but maybe not really getting the consistent delivery of the information they need, or just something's falling short, or maybe they've been attempting to do it on their own and have struggled because it's not their area of expertise. They don't like it. They would rather be working on their business. So I really come in and start to fill in that role and just make the accounting happen magically behind the scenes, find ways to get them pieces of their workflow that are missing, and get them the financial data that can help them make decisions from a point of confidence.
Excellent. And with all those things, what were things like in your business, because it was so new for you to be moving in this direction before we actually met and started working together?
Yeah, my start is a little unique, and I had a bit of a head start in that I've been doing this type of work for almost 11 years, but under somebody else's firm. And I watched them struggle for years with the change and the knowledge that they really should move to value pricing, but being stuck and sticking with hourly. And I got to a point where I recognized that I was ready to go out on my own and really be able to do this. So I was fortunate enough to have many of my clients track me down days after deciding to make that change. So I came into Lumos with really a book of business of clients that I worked with for years, but knowing that I wanted to do things differently and that I was going to need some help to make sure that I did what I said I was going to do to make these changes.
Absolutely. And I mean, kudos to you to have clients that actually tracked you down. It says something about the caliber of work that you do.
Thank you.
With that, now we met at QuickBooks Connect. At that point, were you looking for help, and what made you decide that we ought to be working closely together?
Yeah, so I was probably really only about a month and a half in, and the clients that I had brought over from my old firm, I kept them at whatever it was that we had relationship-wise at the prior firm. I said, you know what, it's just going to be seamless. We're going to keep that in place. But in my mind, I knew I need to make this transition to value pricing. But right now, I'm just going to not rock the boat, and they're going to see how, wow, this doesn't feel any different to continue to work with Jen now that she's under her own umbrella. But I had really read a bunch of articles about value pricing going into QuickBooks Connect. And then when they had some of these meetup opportunities with experts, I knew that that's where I needed to spend my time and focus and find somebody who knows about this and knows the challenges and the pitfalls and can help guide me through it. So I was very fortunate to meet up with you so early in my launch.
I think that we had a great conversation during that meetup, and that the fact that you knew about value pricing so early in your business really is an exception, because when people typically come so many years from working for somebody else, they just go right into the billable hour, because that's right. How they were paid. Sometimes they don't even know that there's an option. When we were looking at working together, do you feel that there were any obstacles that you faced before you made the decision to jump in?
I think I knew I needed to do it. I think that I understood that it was going to be an investment, and there was an initial feeling of, wow, can I really afford to engage in this exercise, because it is going to be an investment. But I think I was seeing enough of what all the benefits were going to be, and that I would be able to recover it, and that the longer that I took to make this pivot, then the more money I would be leaving on the table. So I really didn't have many hesitations about taking the leap.
Mm-hmm. I remember during our conversation, one of the key things you're aware of is that you were probably leaving money on the table, and that was a money pit or money leak that you wanted to solve and close up as quickly as possible.
Yes.
Over the course of the year, I know that you've developed some strategies which allowed you to grow your bank account as well as free up your mind. Can you share what those are?
Yeah, I think the biggest part was, and one of the things that I had asked that you and I focused on was to really be able to convert these clients that were already extremely happy with what I was delivering to them based on an hourly rate, because that's how they were used to working with me, and to convert them over to a value priced package. And so looking at those and getting those converted was one of my first goals. And I think at the beginning, we both kept, finding ourselves, I think, talking a little bit about like, okay, well, the sequence of events for a new client is you bring them on. And then I kept having to think, well, hold on. I really want to work on moving these clients over because I really wasn't sure about how much they were going to fill up my week and how much, how many hours I really was going to be wanting to work. So the movement of those clients over was a very different process than onboarding a new client.
Mm-hmm.
So I think getting those taken care of and having the insight from you to make sure that I was selling them on these additional values that I would provide, mainly on the advisory side, and that I would now have quarterly meetings that we would be looking and reviewing their process flow and seeing opportunities for improvement. I think that just made it such an easy conversation with these clients to be able to say, hey, look, you've been getting this service and you know that you're happy with it, and this is the direction I'm taking my firm, as well as I want to be more of this advisor role for you, and this is the new price. And I maybe had one or two that questioned a few things, but I didn't have anybody who didn't sign.
Then you were able to convert 100% of your clients over to the new way of doing business with you. Is that correct?
I was able to convert 100%. Yes.
It sounds like also one of the things that you did with your strategy was emphasize the value of really you consulting with them or advising them from the financial side in order to help them to grow as well. And that was part of maybe a new aspect that you brought to the table that you didn't have before when you were working in somebody else's firm.
Yes, and I think because when I would work for them before, it was based on how much time I spent, and I was very conscious that, hey, they're used to me spending 10 hours a month. And so I would be hesitant to go and start to dive into some new software enhancement that QuickBooks just came out with, because who am I gonna bill that to? And do they want me spending time on that to make these suggestions? And can I put that on their hourly based invoice? Or now that they just know that part of the value agreement that I put out in front of them talks about, I will consistently be staying on top of software improvements and new apps and finding areas where you might be a fit and being able to make these recommendations. And that's all just part of the price that they're now paying. So it's just better for everybody.
Right. One of the things that you're saying with that is that by separating your fees from time, it actually encouraged you to expand your expertise and be even more of a resource than when your fees were connected to time, because you were very conscious about how much time you were spending for a particular account.
Yes, that was very true. And I also knew I had this kind of a prime window of time to make this transition for those existing clients, because they were used to paying a certain amount. And when I did work at this other firm, I was required to utilize other resources in the firm that I didn't find always to be the most efficient. And so I found that the first, couple weeks that I was working for these clients on an hourly basis before I started to make this move to telling them about the new value pricing, I was getting things done quicker because I was doing them and not reviewing somebody else's work. So if I didn't take this leap and move them to value pricing, I was suddenly going to be doing the same work, delivering the same value, and their bill was going to be lower.
Right. That is the downside to pricing for your time, is as you get better or there's more apps available, it just takes you less time. So I appreciate you bringing that. And with taking that into consideration, then how do you now analyze and quote a project for value instead of time?
So for new clients or projects that I would be considering, I really do follow what I see now is this very clean 3-phase process for any new client that I'm going to take on. And the first is always this file assessment, and it's something that they are going to pay for upfront, and it's going to give me an opportunity to really dive into their books and see what the state of things are, what types of cleanups might be. And at the beginning, it was really hard because I would get the questions that said, well, okay, but then after I pay you that fee, like how much is it, are you going to charge me to clean up? And I would say, well, that's what this fee is for. So I can give you a very clear and accurate pricing on what that would be. And I would make sure to tell them. And then after you decide if you want to move forward to utilize me for these recommendations I'm going to have, then after that, we will talk about an ongoing maintenance package. So for me to feel like I had these clear steps of file assessment, give them a proposal for the cleanup, catch up, app integration, then give them the proposal for an ongoing fee, just gave me so much more confidence. And I would say that the part that's still the trickiest is the cleanup, is pricing the cleanup. But I have, a few different things to go, and I'm going to get some additional resources from you soon in order to make sure that I can really tighten up that piece, because it's during that cleanup process that you really can get great visibility into a very reliable idea of what it's going to take to keep their books up going forward, and what it is that they're going to gain. What is the value behind what they're now going to be getting that they weren't getting before? And it is still very difficult for me to not equate that with how much time that it might take me, but I'm getting better.
It's a process. I mean, let's just agree that for so many years, you looked at it one way, and this is a paradigm shift of how you're approaching your work with your clients and pricing it, recognizing that it has really nothing to do with time and everything with what you bring to the table and how you're helping them. However, it's kind of like going from first learning to ride a bicycle with training wheels, and then you gradually take the training wheels off. Jen, we were talking about the fact that when you first started this, the first thing you wanted to do was raise your clients' rates. How long was that on your mind for, actually, before you started to make that happen?
Having come from the prior firm, I knew that they were leaving money on the table. I knew that I wanted to make sure that with my company, I was not setting myself up to limit my income based on the number of hours that I wanted to work, because I really was aiming to work around 25 hours a week. And if I was going to be able to do that and still make the amount of money that I wanted, then I knew that this was something I was going to need to do. So I would say from the point at which I started to know I was going to make this change and leave the prior firm and start my company, value pricing was something that was always going to be part of my plan.
With that being said, then, can you share a little bit about how you went ahead and raised your clients' prices without getting that much pushback?
Yeah, I think for the ones that I converted over, it was this idea of, overall, on average, they really were going to be paying only a little bit more than what they had been, because I've mentioned before, I did have this opportunity to improve my own efficiencies with my process flow with them. So I think both the comfort that they had of wanting to continue to work with me and the additional things that I talked about on the advisory front, they were all very comfortable with the change in rates that I was going to do. And then with new clients, it was going to be, from the beginning, I was going to make sure that I priced myself at the value of what I was going to deliver, so that from the get-go, I was going to be able to implement this value pricing, and that would be all that they would ever know.
Mhm. Right. Often people usually start with the new clients first and then they go to their existing one. But you went in a different order because of your priorities. And the bottom line is that it worked for you. And because you learned so much of during this past year, what are some of the things that you've done to fine tune your system and grow your income?
I think with the pricing on new projects that I've really made sure to put a lot of padding in the cleanup and catch up piece, because that really is one of the most difficult pieces. Even with the process of starting with a file assessment, there's only so much you can not know you don't know until you really start to catch up their books and find out like, oh, well, hold on, what are all these payments to this additional Amex card that's nowhere on your balance sheet, or these kind of things that as you learn, you do get better and you know to look for things that you might not have before looked for. So I think I'm continuously fine-tuning my strategies of how I go about the file assessment step so that I can really feel confident about what I'm going to be getting into when it comes into the cleanup effort. And then from the transition of the cleanup to then having a conversation with them about ongoing services, I think I've been able to just make sure that I'm communicating the value of what they're going to be getting, both from having really made sure that I ask the right questions during some of our initial conversations to understand what is it that you're not getting now, and what would having that information that you're not getting allow you to do. And when, as I've learned from you, you start to ask these questions there, it's not about me being able to say, I've done this, I can do this, I will do this. It's about them and letting them see like, oh, well, if I had that information, if I knew what my gross margin on my projects were, I would understand at what point I need to take or I'm ready to take another project on, or I'm ready to hire another person. So I think making sure that I really focus it on what it is that they have been lacking, and showing that I'm going to be able to provide that data, and it's going to be accurate, and I'm going to do it timely and consistently. And it's just now going to be a piece of your monthly information that you will have to make decisions from a place of confidence.
Part of what I'm hearing with your approach, especially when you're first meeting someone, is that instead of asking the typical questions that someone might be asking before going into a cleanup, you're actually finding out more about them and what it is that they want to achieve. And that's probably novel for so many of them when they're talking with a bookkeeper, to have you focus on them instead of what you need. And wanted to just acknowledge that approach probably gets their attention and starts to see how you're going to be different to work with than maybe some prior experiences that they've had.
Right. And what's interesting is as I've worked with you more, I've really been able to get guidance and fine tune these questions. And I think there had been something about the way that I communicated before that must have been getting people to feel more comfortable. And I had people who would comment sometimes like, wow, it doesn't feel like I'm talking to a numbers person. And that was always something I thought like, oh, good. I don't come across as just a numbers person. But now I'm really starting to understand more. No, this is about them just being able to have a vision of what it is going to be like if they choose to work with me, what they are going to be getting, not what I'm going to do because I've done this for 18 other clients in the exact same way. And this part of the struggle that I have is sometimes making sure I don't over-explain how the sausage is made and spend too much time talking about the apps and the flow and that, because it's really important for them as business owners to understand what is it that they are going to have that was missing before that is a pain point.
Mm-hmm. Part of what you were mentioning was some of the ways that you approached it and that it was maybe a challenge for you. Are there any specific hurdles that you did face or find that you had to overcome as you were moving in this direction?
Yes, I think it's still difficult for me sometimes to turn a client down if they're not going to be the right fit, and to really recognize that this is a quote I stole from someone else, but opportunity is not obligation. And just
Oh, I
because
love
I
that.
might have the skill set to help somebody and they very clearly need the help, it does not mean that I should change my own priorities as what I'm planning to do for my business, the values that I've set aside for my business, in order to help them because they really need the help. And I think I've come a long way. And because I'm now the decision maker, I think I came from an environment where those decisions to work with a client that maybe wasn't going to value what they were getting, and they were going to constantly talk about the price and constantly complain about that. I wasn't the person being able to say, no, this is not the right kind of client. This is never going to be a success for us. They are just, because unfortunately there are just people who, there's a reason why they've gone through 5 pro advisors. And it's not necessarily because they haven't found the right pro advisor, but because they are just going to be difficult. And I have grown really immensely, I believe, in my ability to just be able to say no.
It's tough to add that word into your vocabulary because you care so much about what you do and the difference that you make for your clients. And you know that you can help them. So want to just say it's a challenge for so many, and kudos for you for deciding to run your business instead of having your business run you. That would have been so different.
Yes, and I think what's very difficult for a lot of other pro advisors out there is if you haven't yet met the threshold of income or, number of clients, however you base your book of business being full, if you're not there, it's a lot harder to say no to something.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so I'm feeling extremely fortunate that I really do get to pick and choose at this point and be extremely picky, because if I didn't take any new clients on any given month, my recurring clients would be enough to hit my targets. But I have this luxury of, if I'm feeling like, wow, the rest of this month looks slow, and oh, here's a new lead that has come in through my pro advisor profile, so maybe I will have a conversation. So I think part of my confidence in gaining the ability to say no a lot easier is backed by having a full book of business. And so I think it is really hard for people who are trying to grow and build their business to understand it's still good to say no sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely good to have boundaries in your business as well as in your personal life. And thinking about that, because of the fact that you're value pricing your work, what is different in your business as well as your life?
I would say the biggest thing is this feeling of being in control. And I now really have a very good sense of what my month is going to look like. And, in light of the current circumstances that we're in with the pandemic, and I happen to have 3 kids and they're learning from home. And so I really am taking this opportunity to just keep the business that I have, because I know that it brings me the income that I would be perfectly happy with by the end of the year if I only had that. But I have this kind of faucet through my pro advisor profile where I would be able to bring in some other projects, some advisory work, a cleanup that might turn into recurring after that. But it's this feeling of being in control and not having worries about, am I going to bill enough hours? I'm planning on going on vacation the last week of the month. Well, I better work twice as many hours because I need to have those hours show up on an invoice, because it's not about that anymore. This is the amount that I know is committed for each client for each month. And this is how much is going to come into my bank account if I do nothing but deliver the value to those clients. And it's now so honed in that it really is very predictable. And stuff always comes up here and there, but it's the feeling of being in control, working only the number of hours I want to work, and yet still being very happy with what the bank account shows.
I think that with what you're talking about is that it really offers you peace of mind because you can forecast, you can predict, you're not going to have some of the ebbs and flows or chasing money that other accounting professionals experience in their business.
Right, right. Not to mention, boy, the invoicing process is just automated. There is no invoicing process. I'm just automatically debiting my clients' accounts each month for the amount that we have agreed upon. And there's not this big process of, I remember my prior firm, they would spend days just doing the invoicing because it was based on hours and it was, ooh, is that too many? And how much did we bill them last month? Or I just do not miss any of that.
It's a beautiful thing to no longer have to track your time. And if you do it on the back end for yourself, that's one thing, but the clients, they don't really care. And just to move forward, anything else that you wanted to mention that we might have overlooked and you feel is important?
I think one other thing that I am realizing is really important is once I have moved someone into this maintenance package, the recurring ongoing work that I'll be doing for them each month, is that I am making sure that I've built into the agreement the idea that we will be reviewing this every year. And then I'm making sure to keep an eye on scope creep and that, oh, wow, I really have started doing these additional things and making sure that I don't lose sight of the additional value that I'm doing. Additionally, I've had a couple different instances with my recurring clients where there was something that was clearly out of scope that they've engaged me for. And I was very pleased that I felt able to right away point out that, yes, I would be happy to help you with this. This is outside of the scope of our regular work. And so there is going to be some, cost associated with this. And none of them were ever worried about paying that extra. They were more than happy to pay for that extra cost. And I could have easily, I think, before I really understood this value pricing, I think I could have just thought, well, I've got enough margin and how much time I spend. I'm just going to do this for them to be nice.
Right.
And I'm so glad that I didn't, because they really were happy to pay and saw this as a completely out of scope thing that they didn't want to be handling themselves, or they maybe didn't have the capability and the knowledge to do it. So I think that was something that was born out of this process, having the confidence to say, okay, this is out of scope, but I'd be happy to help you with it. And here's the cost for that.
The important thing I want to recognize is that in the beginning, you might not have had the confidence, but you had the courage to do it anyway and give it a try because you have such a great relationship with your clients. And as you tried it and you saw success, nobody argued with you. They were happy to pay you for those additional services. Then the confidence came because of the experience and that you did something that was uncomfortable in the beginning. I just want to acknowledge that, Jen.
Yes, thank you. It was hard, and you don't want to come across feeling nervous or having that lilt at the end of your statement so it sounds like a question when you really are just saying, here is the price. And,
right.
Yes, I can feel that I have grown a lot in that area, and now I believe maybe it was at the beginning that I had to just know this I'm being told that I'm really delivering this value and I need to present it that way, and perhaps I didn't always believe it, but now I believe it. I can see that I am helping my clients have a more successful business and have insight into exactly where things stand for them.
I just want to say once again, first year in business, you just celebrated that anniversary. And from when you first started out to where you are now has been such an amazing evolution. And that even though there were some things you didn't fully understand in the beginning, you were always open, you always asked questions, and you were willing to do it even though it was a little bit different than how you've always operated. So it takes a lot of courage, and the desire to really want to make a difference, not just for your clients, but for yourself also to do those things.
Yes. Yeah. I think one other thing that I've really thought about is this transition to value pricing is both really, really easy and obvious, but it's really, really difficult. And so I feel extremely fortunate that I found you and that I made the investment to work with you, because I knew myself enough to know I would need somebody to hold me accountable, because while the ideas all seem very obvious, and of course this is how I should be pricing my things, sometimes when you get down to the moment of looking at it and saying, okay, especially for me, when it was moving existing clients from hourly to value, you would start to convince yourself like, well, maybe they're an exception. And I really don't want to rock the boat there. And so to have somebody who would challenge you, I think is really necessary in this. If you want to make the transition fully and you really want to see the results, you need an expert behind you to give you those pushes when you need them, and to remind you, or to, I had several times where I was about to have a conversation with the client and I would say the number and you would say, well, higher. And I would, and then I would think, wow, that really adds up to this much each month times 12 months times, I'm probably working them for at least 5 years. So yeah, it was clearly an investment that didn't take long to be recovered. It was a quick ROI.
And so just curious about that. How long did it take for you to recover the investment?
I would say that it was probably more within the frame of some new clients that I took on, because there was a little less room with converting my hourly clients to value pricing than there was when I had a new client to take on. So I would say maybe within 3 cleanup projects.
That's fantastic. So kudos to you. And if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, how would they be able to do that?
I can be reached at jen@lumosqb, so LUMOSQB.com. I'm not a huge social media person, so you can find me on LinkedIn at Lumos Accounting. And I'm really love what I do. I'm so glad that I no longer have the handcuffs for the amount of time that I have to work to reach my income goals. It's such a feeling of freedom and peace of mind.
Excellent. Jen, thank you so much for joining and having this conversation with me today. I truly appreciate it, and having just witnessed everything that you've done over the past year.
Thank you very much, Loren, for all your help. And I'm just grateful that you are making yourself available to accounting professionals and other professionals to be able to make this transition and get control of their life and build that bank account.
Absolutely.